Hi, I'm Jeff Gonzalez, president of Trident Concepts, and today I'm here with AR15.com at Reveille Peak Ranch. And we're going to be talking about what is a Navy SEAL's rifle setup. So again, that's a loaded question. And I always try to start by addressing the big picture, which is what is the mission, purpose of my rifle? So from my military experience, there's one idea, but now in the civilian world, there's a different idea. And so my rifle setup is built around a defensive configuration. Like I need a rifle that's going to be a defensive rifle. I'm no longer using it in an operational offensive capacity, so maybe some of those traits or characteristics that I might want there are not going to be applicable here. With that being said, the first subject that I like to talk about is going to be the caliber. When I'm looking at a defensive rifle, I'm not limited to just a 5.56 caliber. I have the ability to kind of explore some new, or maybe not new, but some different calibers. So while 5.56 obviously is incredibly popular and there's plenty of pros and cons about that particular caliber, there are some other ones to consider. And so two of my favorite other calibers other than 5.56 is going to be the 6.8 special purpose cartridge and the 300 blackout. Both of those are really like unique. They perform to a specific task, and the 300 blackout is a great close range. Like I'm looking at 100 yards and in with that gun. Whereas that 6.8 gives me the ability to kind of stretch my distance out, yet still have excellent terminal performance. So, you know, don't feel as though you have to be pigeonholed into just one caliber. There are others that you can choose. Once you select your rifle caliber, the next thing you start talking about is the particulars about your rifle. So I'm going to be talking strictly about the 5.56 and how my rifle is set up as a 5.56 gun. So the first thing I talk about is the heart of any rifle is going to be the barrel. That is the most important component that you're going to see on your rifle. And so there's like three different categories of rifle lengths. We talk about rifle lengths. The first category is going to be like your long range precision, and those are going to be typically about 16 to 24 inches in length. Now, if your purpose is to go out there and do some plinking at extended ranges, or maybe you're going to do some varmint hunting, then you're probably going to look at something in that length. But most of the time from a defensive rifle, that's a little bit too long for our purposes. So now we get into the general purpose barrel length, which is going to be about 16 to 14.5 inches. Now, technically anything below 16 inches requires some additional work, but you can permanently attach your flash hiders to create an overall length that gives you plus 16. So 14.5 to 16 is the most popular barrel length, and that's because it is pretty simple, off the shelf. You can walk into just about any gun store and purchase a 16-inch rifle. Then you get into the short barrels. And the short barrel is basically anything shorter than 14.5 inch. Now, while there are some that are super short, 7 to 8 inches, you really kind of give up a lot in that barrel length range. So my recommendation is not to go shorter than about 10.5 inches. So I have 10-inch guns all the way up to the 14.5 inch to 16-inch barrels, and those typically make up the majority of my inventory. This guy that I have right here is a 14.5 inch barrel with a permanently attached flash hider. So perfect for my use as far as, you know, a variety of tasks that I might want to play with. After we talk about barrel length, the next thing we talk about is the rate of twist, which is the spin that is imparted on the bullet to help stabilize it in flight. Now that's going to really depend on the type of ammunition that you predominantly will be shooting. If you're, again, looking at the long range varmint type, you're going to be probably using a very light round, in which case you're probably going to want a rate of twist that's probably the 1 to 12 range. We really don't see that, so really we're talking about two other types, which is going to be the 1.9 or the 1 to 9 and the 1 to 7, which means that every 7 inches the bullet will rotate one complete circle, and then 1 to 9 is the bullet will make one complete rotation. So depending on the bullet weight, you're going to optimize that rate of twist to get the best performance out of that. And so if you're looking at a defensive rifle that's going to be used inside of 100 yards, then the rate of twist is going to probably be a zero-sum game. You're probably not going to see as much from that choice as you would if you were to extend those ranges to the 200, 300, 400, even 500 yards. So my recommendation is if you're looking at defensive ammo, you're probably going to be looking at the heavier grains. So that's probably going to be 62 all the way up to the 77, even 80 grains. And for that, I'm probably going to want the 1 in 7 rate twist so that I can really get the best performance out of those defensive rounds. So after you've talked about the rate of twist, the next thing we talk about is the actual chambering. And there's really two types. There's the 223 and the 556. My recommendation is to go with the 556. The biggest reason behind that is that it's much more forgiving. 556 is it's a slightly oversized chamber to accommodate for the varying degrees of production for that 556 round. So if you look at some of the military grade rounds, what you'll notice at the stamp, on the head stamp, is a mark that represents the interoperability of that round with my rifle if it's chambered in 556. So I can go anywhere in the world, find that 556 round with that interoperability stamp, and know that it's going to be met to or built to a certain standard. So that standard gives a little bit of fluctuation so that I can maintain the reliability on that rifle. So I like that for that reason. Again, if you're really looking at trying to squeeze precision out of your rifle, then you're probably going to slide more towards the 223 side. So 556 is typically what I will see my rifle barrel chambered towards. So, that pretty much talks about the rifle barrel itself. After we talk about the rifle barrel, the next most important component that you're probably going to see are going to be your sight systems. And there are 3 main sight systems. You've got your iron sights, you've got your red dot sights, and then you've got your low power variable optic. Again, define your mission. What are you really going to need this rifle for? In today's world, iron sights are really more relegated towards a backup condition. So I'm using them if my red dot or low powered optic should die or retire. In that case, I can easily flip up my backup iron sights and still maintain a decent hit ratio with them. My only concern with backup iron sights is that a lot of times the reliability of the red dots has gotten so popular or so well defined that some folks are running rifles without iron sights. And that's one of the things that, could you do that? Sure. Is it a smart thing to do? Probably not. So most of the time, your iron sights are going to also be cheaper than your red dot. So if you're looking at a budget purchase, then buying the rifle with at least some iron sights gets you into the game. You can zero them and still start using them. You don't necessarily need to have that red dot. It will improve your performance, but it's not a necessity. As you move into the different types of sight systems, you've got your red dot sights, and then you've got your low power variable optics. And a lot of times people ask me, well, what's the difference between the two? And obviously the difference is that the low power variable optic means that I can adjust my magnification to kind of improve my range as far as visibility is concerned. And one of the things that I tell people, again, is define the mission of this rifle. Are you going to need to be shooting it out past a certain distance? And while, yes, you might shoot it beyond that distance, you really have to ask yourself, if this is a defensive rifle, how do you justify your ability to shoot at those extended ranges? It's not like you're going to be standing up on a wall defending against the zombie horde coming at you. So you got to really kind of put some thought process into why you might choose one or the other. I typically will tell people that a red dot sight is going to accomplish all the things that you need for a good defensive rifle. You're probably not going to need to go outside of that, but you can. If you do, one of the things that I talk about is that the low power variable optics just add a lot more to that price tag. So again, if price is an issue, getting into the game with a little bit of an improved sight system would start with that red dot sight. So after we talk about the sight systems, the next thing that I talk about is going to be basically your furniture. And what the furniture really represents is how the shooter interfaces with the rifle, how I actually become one with that rifle. So I'm talking mainly about the grip, the upper receiver, or the forend, and then the stock itself. So from a stock position, a lot of times, or a stock point of view, people will ask me why I choose one stock over the other. And most of the time, it has to do with weight reduction. If I'm trying to cut weight on my rifle, that's one area that I can cut weight. A lot of the rifle stocks that are built these days have a sloping nature to the stock that allows you to interface with it to get a much cleaner, more consistent cheek weld, which is important. Other things that I look for in my stocks are how well will it actually position in my shoulder pocket. I want it to make sure that it kind of sticks there. I don't want it to slip and slide. So a lot of times I'm looking to see how that stock is made as far as where I interface with it. As far as the pistol grip, I use a technique that chokes up on the rifle to give me good leverage, good control. And what that typically means is I like that finger groove. Some people don't like it. I use it, so it's an important feature that I look for in my rifles. As far as the forend is concerned, how far forward do you want? Well, again, that's going to be largely dependent on the barrel length. If you're shooting a shorty, you're probably not going to have that full extended rail system that'll allow you to extend your grip, but you really don't need it as well. The nice thing about the forends that we have these days is that they have become lighter and lighter with time. Yet they've also improved the interfacing of the various accessories that I might want to mount onto them. So that could be anything from lasers to lights to all this other stuff that I could put on there. So that's going to factor into your decision making, that if you're looking to mount something like maybe a visible laser or even an IR laser, that how are you going to interface that, how are you going to mount that, and then for me a light is another critical item that we'll talk about in just a second. So after we've moved past the furniture, the next thing, and one of the things that is probably an easy upfront purchase, is going to be some sort of sling system and how you will carry the rifle. Now, I look at the sling as the holster for a rifle. So pistol uses a holster, rifle uses a sling, and that's how we port it, that's how we carry it, that's how we sling the rifle when we need to put two hands on something or do something with both hands. So you're going to want to think about your sling and how that sling is going to attached to your rifle. There's usually 4 different attachment configurations. I recommend that you use what we used to call the delta ring, since most of the rifles don't have delta rings anymore. That location is where I would put my front sling swivel, and then the strong side, which is the right-hand side for me of the buttstock, would be where I put my rear sling swivel. And that allows me to have good use of the sling. It allows me to do pretty much everything I need to do, from shooting, assuming the different shooting positions, transferring from one shoulder to the next, and then having to just work from all the various ready positions. So that's one of the things I tell people is when you're looking for a sling, you want the sling to support the rifle when your hands are not on the rifle, right? But you don't want to lose sight of what you don't want the sling to do, which is you don't want it to interfere with your shooting. You don't want it to interfere with your ability to assume the various ready positions. You don't want it to interfere with your ability to assume the various shooting positions, and you don't want it to interfere with your ability to transfer, right? So as you're looking for a sling, that's some of the things that you want to consider for your sling usage. After the sling, one of the things that we talk about are the actual muzzle devices, and they have evolved since the original A2 or even A1 bird cage, and so a lot of that is going to be dependent on what you intend on doing. I am very fond of shooting with suppressors for the simple reason that I want to retain as much hearing as I possibly can from all the years of being in the shooting world, and so I'm a big fan of shooting with suppressors. So here I have a Surefire Mini SOCOM, which is a great, it doesn't add a huge overall length to it, but it helps to reduce the sound. The big thing for me is, well, yes, I want it to help reduce it. I just want to reduce it to what's something similar to ear safe. That's all I'm looking for. The other kind of nice thing about some of the muzzle devices that I use is that it allows me to also integrate with these kind of like these flash mitigators, and what it really does is it's projecting the flash and the overpressurization created by some of these muzzle devices forward. So it's away from me projecting it forward. And that kind of leads us to the muzzle device itself. So there's a lot of different muzzle devices. You've got muzzle brakes, muzzle comps, and then you've got just a traditional like bird cage of sorts. And so that's going to help you, or that's going to factor into your decision making. What do you intend on really doing with it? I have an actual combination here, which is got a muzzle brake in the sense that, muzzle comp in the sense that it has ports that kind of eject the gases in an upward direction, kind of help keep my muzzle down a little bit. Most of the time I'm shooting with a suppressor, so I don't really get any advantage of that. But if I'm not shooting with a suppressor, then I typically can see some improvements in my shot-to-shot recovery time. So that can be something that you value. After that, we talk about a light system. And the light system is another key kind of concept that you want to give some attention to, because it's really hard to shoot a rifle with a handheld light. So you're almost relegated to having some sort of weapon-mounted light. And again, this is where cost is going to come into consideration. How much light do I need? Well, that depends on what you intend on using it for. If you're going to use it indoors in your own home, you know, you might be looking at being able to penetrate from one space to another space, and that might be maybe 30 yards at the most. So if I can penetrate into one space and see what's against that back wall, I'm pretty happy with the light. What I'm really looking for is how it interfaces with my rifle and how light it is. So when I start adding anything to the firearm that's easy to do, I can add a lot of things to this gun, but what I also have to make sure of is that I keep this rifle at a reasonable weight so that it doesn't interfere with my ability to shoot. After the light, probably the last thing that we talk about is what are some of the things that I can do to really help improve my precision with this rifle, or accuracy, I should say. And one of the easiest things that you can do, obviously, is to feed this thing match-grade ammo, but that's not always practical. One of the other things that you can do is you can drop in an aftermarket fire control system, which replaces the standard trigger with something that's a little bit more match grade. In this case, I've got a Geissele Super T Tricon trigger in there. That's a fantastic trigger. It really allows me to shoot quickly at close range, but then really squeeze out as much precision as I can at those extended ranges. The last thing that I talk about are magazines, which sometimes get kind of forgotten. We lose sight of the magazines, and obviously at some point in not too long ago, not too distant future or past, magazines were really difficult to get. So I tell people that, you know, if you're going to be using one of these types of rifles, then you're probably going to want to invest in a good collection of magazines. And you've got your original GI aluminum magazine, and then of course you've got the new polymer magazines. It really doesn't matter what direction you go with these magazines when magazine availability is suspect. So what I recommend is get a collection of both. It doesn't hurt to have a lot of magazines, particularly for this particular rifle. These are just some of the ideas of what makes up, you know, a Navy SEALs rifle and rifle mindset as far as why my decision-making process eventually got me to this particular rifle configuration. So if you have questions or comments, we'd love to hear them. Please feel free to post them down below. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. One other favor that I would ask is if you post anything on the feed, what it does is it helps YouTube recognize the importance behind the video, and that allows the video to be viewed by more viewers because now we're kind of circumventing some of the anti-gun algorithms that are out there. So do us a favor, post a comment, even if it's nothing more than just boost it back up and help us get those, I guess, help us to decode the algorithms that are out there. All right, until next time, take care and stay safe.